Imagine turning $400 into over $656,000 and doing so by taking down legendary NFL Hall of Famer and three-time Super Bowl champion Richard Seymour. Today, I am interviewing somebody who has done exactly that. Last month, Ian Cohen won the World Poker Tour Showdown main event, taking down a stacked final table in the process. Today, we're going to discuss the whole experience, the huge windfall, the emotions, the aftermath, and how this money changes Ian's financial landscape. Let's dive in. Ian, I'm excited to talk to you today. Your heads up match against Richard Seymour, it lasted over 2.5 hours. I really just want you to take the audience through that whole experience. How exhausted were you? Were you excited to play against Richard, or were you mostly just focused on executing your game plan?
Great, Zach. Thanks so much for having me on. I'm excited to do this. The whole experience really does take a lot of time. So there are two, to start from the beginning, there are two starting flights, a day 1A and B. Both of those are a solid 12 plus hours of poker. I played Saturday, so I played the second one, no break. Full day Sunday, full day Monday, maybe 7 or 8 hours on Tuesday, plus a bunch of extra media stuff before the final table, and then a 7 hour, including breaks, final table that culminated in a heads up battle with NFL Hall of Famer Richard Seymour. That was a wild ride. Um, I hope that the broadcast brings a lot of new viewers, that the name brings a new interest to poker from people who don't regularly watch poker. And it was grueling. I was tired at the end, and it took a little bit to rest and recover to get back into fighting shape to continue to go out there and play more tournaments.
Were you nervous during the whole process, or did you feel you looked pretty at ease? I gotta say, I watched most of the final table. You looked very comfortable, but you never know what's going on inside of somebody's head.
I appreciate that very much. That's part of what I told myself I needed to do to be successful in this tournament. Is there's a lot of noise in this world, so cancel out all the noise, all the stuff that doesn't matter, and do what you do best. Do what you've studied and practiced and done so many times before, and that ultimately, I think we'll touch on this more throughout this conversation. Was what got me, these trophies at the end of the day. Cancel the noise, focus on the signal, to take a line from Nate Silver, and you'll get the results.
Honestly, and that's a good message just in life in general. Is just like focusing on what you can control. As a fellow poker player, that's something I believe very strongly. And I mean, you did an amazing job. I mean, and you faced some adversity. I mean, you lost an all in against Richard Seymour early on the final table. Heads up was wild. I mean, there was a lot of swings back and forth, but you stayed composed. Also, he seemed like quite the gentleman. I think I've only played with him once, but I'm sure that experience was just so cool. I don't know if you're a big football fan or if you have some family that's big football fans, but just really cool to see that.
It was cool. I was familiar with Richard Seymour, the Patriots defensive end, much before him as a poker player. I didn't know he played poker. He loves it. He's had some success in the past. He won a circuit ring and a $2,200 high roller at Cherokee. He knows what it means to be a competitor on the biggest stage. So I don't think any of the lights, the camera, the sounds bothered him at all. He played the best of his ability. Certainly, coming into the final table, shorter in chips. Everyone had plenty of maneuverability and had a chance to win, I think, with the chip stacks to start. But he was fortunate to get the better end of some all ins early, including against me, in a hand that propelled him to the heads up battle.
Yeah, and I mean, that was a stacked final table. I gotta say, I've been out of the tournament scene for a couple of years. I've been focusing mostly on cash games with, moving and having a wife and a child now. But I knew every single person on that final table. I knew all six of those people. I've played with all of them. So again, that's also a really cool facet of your story is just taking down such a tough final table there.
It was, and these are always tough fields. People love coming to play poker in Florida. Some of the best in the world come from all over, and just putting yourself in a position to win is really is all you can do.
You mentioned to me, and one thing that the WPT and the bloggers really latched on to was the fact that you want a satellite to get into this $3,500 main event. But something you told me on the side was that you were going to play anyways. So the satellite aspect is a very nice story for sure. It makes for good content. But just talk us through that process of like playing satellites when you're already going to play the event.
Sure, I think it's pretty common. The satellite fields are often fields that don't include as many of the good full-time players. And the reason why is you just only have so much, time and energy to play. So if you're traveling from out of town to play a full schedule at the Hard Rock in this case, to take time away from possibly another event to play the satellite, it's not the best use of your time. I was not playing a full Hard Rock schedule. In reality, I don't play many Hard Rock tournaments specifically, but I decided to go and fire a satellite bullet, which means buying an entry into the satellite, and I found the opportunity to advance, and I hopped right into Saturday's flight of this WPT event.
I think this is a powerful lesson, even for viewers that don't know so much about poker. You had the means already to buy into this $3,500 event. I know you told me that you're pretty solid financially. You probably adhere to good bankroll management. And what this means to people is being able to play a $400 satellite and ultimately turn that into over $650,000. What is that like a That's like a 1500x on your money. Uh, in finance, we call that asymmetric upside. Being able to take a very relatively low risk, but also a risk that is statistically unlikely to pay off and just have a huge win. That's something that you should only do if you already have sound finances. If you only have not that much money to your name, then playing a $400 satellite that is really unlikely to lead to any real money is a big gamble. I think in the real world, there's a lot of parallels to like putting your money in crypto or other high risk assets, right? Where for someone like you and me, it can make sense to have a portion of your portfolio in these risky things because, again, they provide that asymmetric upside. But if you're just starting out, it's really not advisable. And that's kind of the lesson I would want to give to my audience.
Good. Yeah, this is really why I wanted to have this conversation with you and be a part of your content, because I think it's the financial mindset that is so valuable and is often the separator between people who take their efforts seriously but aren't successful, because they really disregard some of the financial, you might say minutia, but it's so critical, and it puts themselves in bad situations, and they struggle to get out of it. And sometimes the time and effort it takes to get out of those bad spots, um, means that they're missing out on a lot of opportunity, where they could otherwise be thriving. The satellite structure is an opportunity to take a smaller amount of money, knowing you have a significantly higher ROI, and mitigating your risk, right?
It's not just that, it's also just the sheer probability that it's actually going to lead to a positive result, right? So when you play a satellite, uh, even if you have a big edge, you're still only going to cash maybe like 15 or 20% of the time. And then you have to parlay that with actually cashing in the tournament. Now, yeah, of course, there are ways you can mitigate the risk. You could sell action into the $3,500 event. But if you're not doing that, then you have to parlay winning the satellite with at least cashing in the tournament, which is just two fairly low probability things that have to happen. So, in my opinion, you really need to have a solid financial base. You have to have a good bankroll in poker to take these types of risks, which are statistically not great. Yes, there's an ROI, there's a positive return, but it's risky. There's a lot of parallels to regular people out there listening who may not understand a lot of poker. There's all kinds of ways where you could be increasing your risk of ruin without realizing it. One of the most common ways the average person does that is by being over leveraged, especially with real estate. I am not a fan of people taking mortgages on houses where they only put down like 3% or 5%. You are borrowing a lot of money against a relatively low amount of skin in the game. Just statistically, your likelihood of foreclosing and having a very ruinous event is much higher than people that put down a traditional 20%. Not to mention, there's other costs involved. It's the same thing with people that are trying to have rental properties, things like that. People radically underestimate risk and leverage, and that's definitely a message I'm going to carry on my channel: is having a good financial base in terms of not putting yourself in harm's way, especially if you're someone that has a family, has kids, which, a big part of my audience and clientele are going to be people who have families that are in our, in their 30s. So definitely want
Sure.
to talk about that. I want to move on though. Winning large amounts of money is not foreign to you. You won, I believe, 193,000 about a year and a half ago in a World Series of Poker circuit event. But I'm guessing that this event garnered a lot more attention for you. So I'm just curious now to pivot back towards your experience a little bit. What the subsequent few days after you won were like? Were there any funny interactions or insights you had after winning such a large sum of money? Did you have a lot of people reaching out to you? Just like what was that experience like?
Oh, you hit the nail on the head. I heard from everyone I've ever known. It seemed like maybe God, I don't know. It seemed like 1,000 people reached out to me, and some means like every phone number I had, sent me a text message, messages online elsewhere, and that was great. I had no idea that so many people would care, that they were so happy to watch the stream. Poker fans and non-poker fans alike were reaching out saying that was incredible to watch. So that's what means a lot to me. In terms of the financial aspect, I always told myself that when I was ready for something like this, it would happen. Part of me is glad that these types of things didn't happen at 21 years old. I just wouldn't have been in a mature enough place in my life to handle all of it. And now what that means is I have financial security, of course, to a more significant extent that I didn't have before. But it does not mean that I have any more motivation to go out and buy a Ferrari than I did before, which is, very little. If something does come up unexpected that there's no, financial hardship or burden that that's going to cause. Um, but that doesn't mean we slow down. That doesn't mean we stop working, while we're still able to. I think I'd be the type of person that would just get unhappy, let alone bored, if someone said, "Hey, why don't you just take that money and move to Costa Rica and just sit on the beach for the rest of your life?" I'm 36. That sounds fun for a week or something, but that doesn't sound fun for the rest of my life.
So yeah, let's talk about the money a little bit, right? A little over 650K. Obviously, a lot of things can happen financially in terms of where you end at the end of the year. But if we just take that score in a vacuum, after taxes, you're probably looking at somewhere between like 350 and 400, probably towards the higher end of that range. So let's just say 400,000. That is a lot of money. What is your personal philosophy in terms of kind of putting that into your poker bankroll, saving it, investing it, and also enjoying it? Do you have any? I know you joked about not wanting to buy a Ferrari, but are there any more reasonable luxury items or expenses that you're thinking about enjoying in the near future?
There are a few things to consider when answering that question. Taxes are a big part of that. And that doesn't just mean having the money to pay the government, when I file my return, but also the things that I can do in terms of business expenses that I might enjoy, that make my life, better in some small way. One example, is just like travel, right? If I'm looking at a JetBlue flight and it's $250 to fly, middle seat in the back of the plane, or $900 to fly Mint, which is like JetBlue's first class. I can say, oh, you know what, I'll fly Mint because I'm going to be able to deduct that anyway, and I have a large, tax liability this year, so it makes financial sense, and sure, betters your life in some small way. Everybody's different, and they have their things that they value more than others. But for me, flying first class might be something that I'm happy to pay a premium on that others don't care about. Those are just the types of things to consider. Then they come up every day, as you do business in any field. Is there a purchase, something like that, that been interested in? Yeah, I think all of them are small. Maybe might upgrade some furniture for the house. I think I might buy a outdoor griddle, but those types of things that if you enjoy, they're small, bring value to your life. Those are the types of things I might look at more. And with that said, I have to shout out an amazing girlfriend who is quite the shopper, and she we talk about positive expected value and ROI and all those things when it comes to shopping. She makes that her mission, so I have a good partner in that, to make sure that I'm not getting screwed when I go out and buy something.
That's awesome. Yeah. And, as a financial coach, I would encourage you, I know you do this to a certain degree already, but I would encourage you to really think about what you want that money to mean for your life. I am a big advocate on getting as much utility out of your money as possible. And as you know, that can mean many different things. Yeah, that means saving and investing some of it so that it grows for your future. But it also means having a plan for what you want all of that growth to actually do in this world, right? You take your 400K post tax score. For someone that is really bad with money, that money could be gone in a few years or even less. That money can just evaporate and you don't have much to show for it. On the other end of the spectrum, somebody that had no vision at all and they just invested every dollar. I mean, that's a lot of money. That over you said you're 36, over 20 years at let's say 8% return, that 400K would turn into like I think 2.6 million. And if you add another decade to that, it would actually be like 5.6 million. So that 400K pretty much represents the amount of money that you would need to be very comfortable when you're in your 60s. Obviously, you're going to be somewhere in between those two extremes, right? You're not going to blow the whole 400K, and you're probably not going to save and invest every single dollar. But having a plan for your money and okay, I want to use this much to kind of like spoil my girlfriend and have these experiences, and I want to put this amount away for my future. I think those are really how good and healthy things to explore in your personal life.
Good. You touched on a couple subjects that I'm pretty passionate about as well. One, pretext. There's no amount of money that you can't torch, light on fire. You can have a $5 million and be broke in the weekend over the weekend. I mean, people make horrific decisions, bad investments. They give their money or access to it to the wrong people. They make bad deals, and especially having grown up in the casino world, you'll find somebody somewhere. Crypto is another example that'll gladly take your money off your hands. So never really think you're safe if you're not making conscious decisions. That doesn't mean actively managing, but at least make a conscious decision about what you want to do with the money, and have some sort of goal for the future. So you touched on two things. One is the utility of the money, and then what it means to your life. We're both big advocates for going out and spending on experiences you enjoy. You can sit at home and watch Wheel of Fortune or Jeopardy when you're 90 if you make it that long. But if you want to go skiing in the Alps, do that now, right? Go or as soon as you can, while you can really enjoy it. If you want to go out and learn how to fly helicopters or something, go do that while your vision is still good. And again, you can sit on the couch and you be lazy when you're 90 years old if you make it that far. So the utility of the money for experiences that you enjoy, building relationships with loved ones, genuinely people you care about. That's what life's all about. The time value of money is very, very powerful. So there is a little bit of a balance of like, hey, I could spend this all today and make more money later, or I could actively invest it, or at least make a conscious plan on how I'm investing it and let someone else actively manage it for a different type of lifestyle in the future. And I do have a hands-on approach personally to my investments. If you're not somebody that's comfortable with investment products, stocks, options, bonds, whatever it may be, there are plenty of financial advisors that you can do your research on. Make sure they're fiduciaries, which means they have a legal obligation to do what's in your best interest. You can look at their backgrounds to see if there's been any red marks on their reports from the federal government or financial institution.
Absolutely. I think you touched on a lot of important points there. I think it's highly individualized. I think there are a subset of people like you and me who are capable of managing our own money. And then there's a lot of people out there that just are not comfortable with that. And I think in general, you kind of know yourself and you know where you fall on that spectrum. And if you're someone that's not comfortable handling a large amount of money, then I agree. You should definitely hire somebody who can manage it for you. I advocate for my clients to find somebody they trust. Everything you just said is totally accurate. Find somebody who is trustworthy, has a good track record. The only area that I'm a little different is I also am very mindful of fees. I think a lot of people dramatically overpay for their financial advisor. If you're paying a percentage of AUM, which means assets under management, and especially if that number is 1% or even higher, and you have a lot of money, that can get to be very expensive. Just very simply, if you, let's say you had, $2 million and you're paying 1% AUM, you're paying $20,000 a year to that person to advise you. This space is actually being heavily interrupted. There are a lot of companies out there. I don't think I'm going to shout out a particular one, but there are several where you can find a good, trustworthy CFP or other professional who can manage your money for, let's say, $3,000 a year or $5,000 a year. And you're actually saving a lot of money by paying a flat fee versus paying a 1% AUM. I know that 1% sounds small. If in your head you're like, oh, 1%, but that's actually a lot of money, especially compounded over a couple of decades.
What I love about this space is that our generation and adults even younger have a lot of access to savings and investing products that our parents had to go out and spend a lot of money to find. Not only spend money to find, but as you mentioned, pay huge fees to be a part of. And really, I see products now where you can, for $5 or $10, open accounts and begin investing and earning better yields than just sticking the money in some checking account somewhere. Buy Vanguard funds for free. I don't recommend a lot of products just in general because you're right. Everyone's expectations, everyone's situation in life is a little different. But like a Vanguard portfolio with a low expense ratio is what I would recommend to anyone without really knowing much of their personal details.
As a financial coach, I really refrain from giving specified financial advice. Obviously, you're my guest on the show. You can shout out whatever you want. But yes, I do agree with you that for most people who self manage, just using one of the big brokerages, I think I personally use Vanguard. But there's there's Fidelity, Schwab. These are all rock solid companies.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where if you're someone that wants to self manage, you can do it for a very low cost and do it effectively. I do want to pivot to something else. You mentioned earlier upgrading to first class because you have a high tax burden this year, and it's something that you can you can write off some of that money that's going to be taxed very heavily. This is something that I always said if I had a big 6 or 7 figure score. Actually, is that I would definitely look to not only do stuff like that, but I would actively look to take some exotic poker trips. Let's just say you value travel and you wanted to go somewhere across the world and also play poker while you're there. I'm not a tax expert, but I do believe you can write off all of your travel expenses to one of these locations. I actually did a lot of background on what's available for the second half of this year in terms of going to exotic places. I'm curious if this is something that you've thought of at all since winning the score.
A little bit. I haven't looked into where I might go, but that's one of the great things I've always loved about poker is that it's taken me to lots of different places to meet lots of different people. It's not just an expense; it's also a tax opportunity. Tax is boring stuff that I know most people don't want to think about.
We can make this fun, like because for our viewers at home, yeah, talking about taxes is boring. But think about this: you won $400,000 after tax. All of that money, the other 200 and some thousand, that's going to be taxed at like between your federal tax and your self employment. You're looking at high 40s, low 50s. To be able to write some of that off and go to somewhere really fun to play poker, I personally think that's really cool. I actually did a little background for you. I think two of the most exciting places you could consider for the latter half of this year. There's the EPT Barcelona, which so that's Barcelona, Spain. That is in August. Also, the WPT Australia. That is from September 10th to the 30th. Those are both trips where you're probably going to spend a lot of money to get there, to stay, all of your meals and things like that. And to be able to write that off and have that experience, I think that would be a really exciting thing to do. And if you value travel and you like some of these places, I would really encourage you to plan that.
Yeah, you have to figure out what you enjoy spending money on in life. Travel is something that, yeah, I definitely enjoy spending a little extra money on. Going to Australia, I've never been, and I think that that would be a great use of money when it comes, especially to offsetting some of the tax responsibility.
Absolutely. I know you got the Vegas and the World Series coming up, which again, that's going to be a big write-off opportunity for you. But I really hope to encourage you to dream about one of these trips. I wrote down several places. There's a lot of places you can go. I don't know what's kind of on your bucket list in terms of travel, but there obviously I said Barcelona. There's Australia. There's a series in South Korea. There's a series in Sao Paulo, Brazil. You have a lot of options. So If it's something you care about, I really hope you will consider going to one or two of these places, creating a lot of good memories, getting a lot of value out of that money, and getting a big discount on your trip in terms of the tax write off. So I hope that's something that you will explore either now or after the World Series of Poker this summer. Another thing that I wanted to mention to you, again, I'm not a tax expert, but these are things that you can explore and look at on your own. Have you looked into or have you ever created a solo 401k? Because that is another way to actually greatly lighten your tax burden for this year.
No, that is a brilliant idea. Actually, I have one tax advantage investment account. Obviously, the contribution caps to what you're talking about is much higher than like a traditional or Roth IRA. So I think, yeah, you're right. As a self-employed person, that's pretty important, and something I should look into here in short order.
Yeah, again, you do your own research, maybe consult a tax expert. But for me personally, most of my years as a poker player have actually been pretty consistent. That's part of being a cash game player primarily. But I did have 2020 where I had the biggest score of my career and several smaller scores, and I did well outside of that. I actually used that year to contribute a nice fat chunk to a solo 401k. I do believe you're allowed to contribute up to $72,000. So that is 72K that you could basically not have to pay, like I said, 50% tax on. And yes, you'll be taxed on it when you're old, but it'll be at a much lower tax rate. So, again, as a financial coach, I did want to try to add some value to your life. And that's definitely something I would encourage you to look into. And you have time, you have the rest of the year, obviously.
Yeah, that's awesome. Actually, I didn't know that the contribution limits were that high. I know for like SEP IRAs and things like that, I thought it was somewhere around $20,000. But solo 401k to be able to contribute 72,000 is that's huge.
Yeah, that can save you a lot of money, and you're just earmarking a nice chunk of money. I mean, you know better than anybody how much that money can grow over the next 20 or 30 years. So, yeah, that's really smart planning. I have that set up, and that's not something I contribute to every year because I already make enough contributions with my and my wife's Roth IRA and HSA and things like that. But you ever get one of those big scores, that's a great place to just strategically lower your taxes. So happy to talk about that. Ian, I just want to say congratulations again. This was not only a huge six-figure score, but also I'm sure a memorable experience that you will have for the rest of your life. Taking down Richard Seymour heads up, winning such a prestigious table. I'm sure this is going to be aired on TV, so you're going to see yourself. Any closing thoughts and just anything you want to say to the audience out there?
Oh, well, thanks to everyone for all the love and support after the tournament. And Zach, I really appreciate what you do because I think a lot of people don't take the time to think about some pretty big concepts when it comes to budgeting and financial responsibility. The time value of money is one of them. We talked about spending money on experiences and the utility of money. That's huge. You know, if you don't really care if you have a nice car, but you really love skiing, forget the car and go out and book that ski trip. You know, those are a couple of the pretty big ones. And sometimes in life, you know, it helps to have a little guidance, a little coaching from somebody when it comes to money. So, you know, reach out to that coach, watch Zach's videos. You know, these are things that are big concepts, but they're pretty simple to start. And any effort you put into thinking about that in the beginning will return huge dividends for you later in life, especially if you're on the younger side and still working and have a long road to go before retirement.
Absolutely. Ian Cohen, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much for your time.